Oh, hello, and today we're going to be having a look at Star Trek Adventures, the role-playing game from Modiphius Games. So we've got the core rulebook. This is the non-deluxe edition. More about that in a bit. The set of dice, the mission pack. These are the Voyager's Mission Compendium Volume 1, and also the Game Master screen. Let's get the dice out of the way first of all. Now the dice are rather nice. You've got these lovely D20s where the 1 is a Starfleet badge. You've also got the non-standard D6s with this kind of star pattern on. Obviously you've got the blank faces, the 1 hit, the 2 hit, and then the 1 hit with a special effect symbol, which is required for the game. Unfortunately, I think the dice pack's a bit of a weird package because you can roll a maximum of 5 dice and you get 3 D20. Surely it would have made more sense to give you 5 D20. And then you get 4 D6, or challenge dice, if I remember correctly, is the actual name for them. But, you know, I would have rather have had 5 D20 and maybe 5 or 6 D6. And given the price of the pack, I actually think these dice, although, as I say, they are rather lovely dice, don't represent the best value and are the most disappointing thing that I've bought for the game so far. But having said that, you know, buying 1 pack's possibly worth it just so, you know, you've got these. And I think the most I've seen roll in so far is about 6 of these. I'm going to have to double check to make sure there's not a dice cap limit that I've missed out on. But as I say, you roll a maximum of 5 of these. So if you were to buy 2 packs, you'd have 6 D20s, and that means you'd have 1 spare, which would, yeah, just a little bit niggling. So yeah, that's my biggest complaint, the dice. Anyway, let's have a look at the rulebook. Right, well, as I mentioned with the rulebook, this is the standard edition. The deluxe edition has a different cover. I think has slightly nicer interior pages and I think a map and 3 bookmarks. But apart from that, it's basically the same. You get a nice map on the inside cover, and then this beautiful Star Trek themed sort of pages which have a black background. Now if you get this as a PDF, it comes with white pages, and I think you also get a version with black pages as well, if I remember correctly. And in some ways I would prefer this to have the white pages because the black does show up greasy fingerprints, which is a bit of a shame. But having said that, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So you've got some nice imagery, which is sort of art version of some of the next generation stuff, but also you know, original series and stuff like that. But it tends to be not actually focused on kind of your regular characters. There is a lot of kind of new, unique artwork in. It talks about the division of the space into the 4 different sectors, and of course the Federation space down near the bottom here, and lots of really nice background info. So if you're not that aware of the Star Trek universe, this gives you a pretty good leg up. And you know, here's one of the new bits of artwork with a load of Klingons and Federation looking like they're going for a raid on some Romulans. And there's lots of little nice box arts break out, lots and lots of great info. The setting for the universe is 3 settings. You've got the Enterprise, the original series, and the Next Generation, which also includes Voyager and Deep Space Nine. So the main focus is, what is it, 2471, so around about the time Voyager disappears, which I think's the 4th or 5th season of Next Generation off the top of my head. Anyway, lots of great stuff, as I say. Page and page of stuff, nice pictures. Here's sort of an artwork harking back to the original series, and talking about various things, 23rd, 24th century, etc. Really, really cool. And what are we? Page 51. It's basically been fluff. Then we get a little bit about what is Starfleet, the prime directives, with some more great artwork, and then kind of, where are we? Page 58. We're starting to get into sort of the actual role-playing system a little bit, but not too much. It's still sort of background fluff. Talks a little bit about department colours, which sadly for me, you know, red is traditionally the red shirts who die, but of course in the Next Generation, gold became the ops division and red became the command division, which is a bit of a shame because you can't kill off red shirts quite so easily now because, you know, they're command people. You don't want to kill them off. Beautiful double page spread artwork. I really enjoy that piece of artwork. But as you can see, loads of background info, and then finally on page 73 we've actually got some proper game intro. So the challenge dice, which are those little sexy black dice I showed you right at the start of the video, you don't need to buy them. You can use a regular d6, and as it says here, a 1 is equivalent to 1 hit, a 2 to 2 hits, a 3 and a 4 0 hits, and a 5 and a 6 equal to 1 plus something known as an effect. So it talks a little bit about what that all means. It then talks about how the game's divided up. So you've got scenes, you've got traits, advantages, tasks, attributes, disciplines, focuses, all the sort of guts of the game. And, you know, it's not a bad little kind of trying to smoothly get you into the game. It talks about threat and momentum and determination, then some more advanced rules, extended tasks, for example. So that's sort of the game engine. But then you actually get to your character creation, which is page 93, which I put a little bookmark in so it's easy to find. It talks about what your attributes are, what your disciplines are, things called focuses, talents, and then your life path creation, which is a 7-step thing where step 1 you pick a species, step 2 you pick where you kind of grew up, step 3 your actual upbringing within that environment, step 4 what you did at Starfleet Academy, step 5 your basic career, step 6 what happened on your career, and then step 7 you just round out your character and make sure you've not broken any of the rules, because there are certain rules about maximum values on particular bits, and each step gives you bonuses to various things, gives you things called values. And it's a really cool little character creation system that gives you a pretty well-rounded character at the end of the game. Now when it comes to your species, the out-of-the-box species are Andorian, Bajorian, Betazoid, Danubian, Human, Tellarite, Trill and Vulcan. Now there are Romulans and Klingons in the rulebook, but they're sort of your non-player characters, so your opponents. And then of course it goes down to tell you what you get with some nice artwork, and then the various phases, what you get at different phases, and then finally you round out your character with some things called career events, which could be your ship was destroyed, you were required to take command, you learned a unique language, maybe you discovered an ancient alien artifact and stuff like that. And then some nice info about how to name your character, some kind of derived statistics that you get based on what you've generated over the course of your character creation. And then you get to pick a rank and role. So for example, you can be a commanding officer, an executive officer, an operations manager, chief of security, ship's counsellor, etc. Then your equipment, so everyone gets a uniform, a communicator, a tricorder, a sidearm, and various tools required for your job. So nice little bit. And then you get to your character sheet. Now this is an example character, so your name, your species, the environment you grew up in, the assignment you were given, things called traits. So for example, this is a Trill, so they've got the trait of Trill, and they've got a symbiont, so they've got a symbiont called Etan, so that's their traits, and they can give you some game mechanics on occasion. The rank you are within Starfleet, and unfortunately for those of you who don't want to play Starfleet, the rules assume you are Starfleet, so maybe an expansion is going to build on that, and then also your upbringing. You then have 6 attributes, which are a bit like your statistics, so like strength, intelligence, constitution from D&D, for example, but they're slightly different. You've got control, daring, fitness, insight, presence and reason, and they can go up to a maximum of 12. I believe it is possible maybe to exceed that once you get past character creation, but it's very unlikely. You've then got disciplines, which are sort of your core Starfleet skills, for want of a better word. So you've got command, con, security, engineering, science and medicine, and obviously con would be like Sulu, helmsman type stuff. You've then got some values, which are like core beliefs, which you can use for role-playing reasons. So, for example, this one's got seek out new life and new civilizations as a core value. You've then got focuses, which are things that relate to your discipline. So, for example, survival training. So it's possible if you're doing like a security test, you would actually try and tap into your survival training as part of your security test, and that will give you a mechanical advantage on your tests. You've also got talents as well, which are other bits that you can use for role playing, and for example, intense scrutiny is one of their talents. It would also, again, potentially give you mechanical advantages in various tests. You've then got stress, which is a bit like your hit points. You've also got something called determination, which is a special currency in the game to make your hero awesome. And you've also got another currency you use in the game called motivation, which is a bit like determination, but just not quite as good. You've then got a section for your weapons, injury, and equipment. So quite a lot of stuff going on, and it can make the game seem fairly complex, but at its core, it's a pretty simple game. You take an attribute and a discipline, add them together, roll under that on a d20, and then depending on your focus and your talents and your values, you can do subtle little modifications, and you're trying to roll a certain amount of successes. Now, if you roll a natural 1, or you're able to use your focus, then you can get a double success for those. And if you exceed the amount of successes you need in a test, that will generate something called momentum. And if you generate momentum, you can use that to do all sorts of little cool things. And the standard test is 2d20, and you can buy up to a maximum of 5d20 for any tests. And that's basically the game, to be honest. Unfortunately, where it gets a little bit more complex is when you get into like combat, and there's quite a lot going on with combat. So anyway, we can then create some supporting characters, talents here. So for example, diffuse the tension is a command talent. So to get this talent, you need to have a command discipline of 3 or more. And whenever you attempt a task to persuade someone not to resort to violence, you can add, basically for free, a d20 to your test. So that's really, really good, but situational. If we were to switch to, let's say, medical talent, triage, you need to have a medicine of 3 or more. When you attempt a task to identify specific injuries or illnesses or determine the severity of their condition, you may spend 1 momentum, and this is a repeatable spend, so you can spend it multiple times, to diagnose 1 additional patient. So basically, rather than attempt to do a task, let's say on 4 patients requiring 4 tests, you can do 1 test, spend 3 momentum, and test all 4 in one go. So that's pretty good. You've then got a little bit about character development, which I need to read a bit more. I'm not 100% happy, I've quite got my head around it, but you've got these things called milestones, and that helps you tweak your character. You've also got something called reputation, which potentially gives you something to watch out for, because in Starfleet you've got to maintain your reputation if you want to get promoted, and if you lose too much reputation, then you could actually get court-martialed or even kicked out of Starfleet potentially. So it's a sort of a bit like an alignment system, I would guess would be the best way to think of it in D&D terms. You then move on to a bit talking about alien worlds. Then you've got quite a big section on conflict, so you've got social conflict, and then when you get past that you actually get to actual physical combat. And in physical combat you've got various options, so each person can do a task and an action once per turn, but you can buy extra actions using momentum, and there's quite a lot of twiddliness going on there. You've then got a section on equipment, including, for example, your weapons, and again some nice artwork. So here you go. If we look at a phaser type 1, this rolls 2 damage dice. It can be charged up, it can also be concealed, it's standard issue, and it's a ranged attack. But you've also got melee weapons, so for example a knife, which has 1 attack damage, but it has this attribute known as vicious. And when you actually look in an earlier section here, vicious deals X additional damage for each effect rolled. So if you remember on those D6 I showed you earlier, Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, can you see it's got this little Starfleet command? That means you've rolled an effect. So you do 1 damage plus you get an effect. Well, if it's vicious, it does an extra damage. So this face would do 2 damage. And then you roll something called resistance, which is like your armor, to try and avoid the damage. And there's various rules about whether you get injured or not, and whether it's lethal or non-lethal damage. There's a very good section on starships, including an ability to roll up a starship character. And again, with combat, there's lots of fiddly bits. For example, if you're in the medicine seat, you can do various bits and pieces with your ship there to help you, but when you're in combat it also means you get various special things you can do. So for example, if we look at the navigator in combat, they can do the plot course task, the chart hazard task. The helm can do maneuver, impulse or warp, and so it's very good from that point of view that you can replicate that Starfleet battle system, whereby depending on where you're sitting depends on what you can do, and you've got to work as a team to do all the different bits and pieces you need to do. But it's also a little bit twiddly and makes the simpler rules I showed you earlier start becoming a little bit more complex. So there's lots to like in here. Creating your starship is really cool. You basically pick a ship, and whether it's been refitted, what its basic mission is, and all that. And once you've done all that, you end up with a generated starship, which becomes your starship. We then get into sort of the sort of more GME type stuff, where you've got enemy starships, alien races, how to run the game, and all that business. There is also a little adventure which forms part of a living campaign that you can actually download off the web, particularly if you subscribe to the Modiphius newsletter for it. So here it is, Rescue at Xerxes. That is the first mission in the living campaign. So there you go, that's a whistle-stop tour through the core rulebook. Now, one thing you might want to do is go online and look for various resources to download. So for example, this is a fan-created character sheet, which is quite nice. It's a variant on the official character sheet. There's also a very good summary of the combos. So for example, command combined with daring will help you make a split-second command decision or resist fear or coercion. So if someone's trying to force you to do something you don't want to do, you would make a command plus daring test. So it's a very good summary sheet of the various tests you might need to do. I've actually made up my quick summary of values, which is something your character has and is a way to generate what's known as determination. I've also quickly created my own little summary sheet of how the game works. Someone has done an equivalent thing here. So for example, if you roll on a test less than your discipline value and you happen to have a focus in that discipline, then you get 2 successes, 1 success failed, or what's known as a complication. So really, I mean, once you know the rule system, this one sheet of paper that I downloaded off the web is probably enough. It's actually 2 sheets of paper, but you can obviously print it up as 2 sheets to 1 page. So that's pretty cool stuff. But we'll come back to that, because of course there is also the official reference screen, which you can just about see lurking in the corner. The adventures, there are I think 8 I want to say in here. Let's have a look. 8 different adventures. So A World with a Bluer Sun, Border Dispute, Entropy's Demise, Forest of the Night, Biological Clock, A Plague of Aris, That Which is Unknown, and The Shepherd. I've had a quick skim of these. They look pretty good, and it's interesting this is volume 1, so there's potentially going to be more volumes. In fact, there are several extra volumes going to be coming out for this game, which I'm really looking forward to. So I think this is something you don't need to buy early on, but it's a nice to have. And then of course you've got the Game Master's Toolkit. Now I've got a feeling you are going to want this for a couple of reasons. First of all, you get a really cool poster. Now this poster, of course, who cares, poster, but it's nice to have. But the main reason for getting the poster is on the other side of the poster you've actually got a nice large star map. Now if you've got the Deluxe Edition, I believe you get this poster as part of that, so maybe not so cool if you've got the Deluxe Edition. But you also get the screen and these rather handy sheets. So for example, if you're flying the spaceship as the commander, you might want this sheet, Commanding Officer Reference Sheet, and on the opposite side you've got a rules summary. So that's really, really good. You've got the helm and navigation reference, which again has a rules summary on the other side. The sensor and internal systems reference, which, surprise, surprise, has a rules summary on the other side. Security and tactical reference, which again has a rules summary on the other side. Comms and internal systems, which, yes, has a rules summary on the other side. And then the conflict reference and the conflict momentum spend. So these sheets here are enough to run the game, and they come with a nice Star Trek theme and decent thickness cardboard. Definitely worth it. And then of course for the Game Master you've got this beautiful set of screens here, which are a nice thick card, and it's got a really, really nice panoramic image as well. And I think that is well worth it. And if you don't want to go hunting around for fan created reference sheets, is pretty good, and you've got a nice summary of what comes inside on the slipcase there. So anyway, there you go. That's as I say, a very quick look at the bits that are currently out for Star Trek Adventures. There is more stuff coming. I'm looking forward to actually getting this to the table. We've sort of played around with it a bit, but not actually had a game yet of it. But I really do quite like it. Criticisms are, it's a very big, thick, intimidating book. It's a bit expensive. The dice are ridiculously expensive, as I say. I think they should be half the price, or you should get double the amount for what you're paying for these. I'm a little bit disappointed, but having said that, they are really nice dice. So maybe I'm just old-fashioned and think dice should not be massively expensive. You don't need them though. You can get by with standard D20s and D6s and just do a conversion on a chart. The actual main book, the black pages look lovely, but they are showing up fingerprints, which is a little bit of a pain. The main issue with it is layout and rules being scattered around a bit, which means it's a good fun read, but it's not necessarily brilliant in play. So I think you are going to have to create your own reference sheets or buy the GM screen. Now obviously once I actually get playing with the game, I might change my opinion once I've had a real go at it in anger. But so far I'm really impressed. A lot of my players are really excited. They're big Star Trek fans, and it seems like at its core a really simple game. There are some twiddly bits. There is this currency of momentum, which you can use to buy temporary advantages. Determination, which you can also use to buy temporary advantages, but they're slightly better typically than the ones you get off momentum. And then the GM, their version of momentum, something called threat. So players sometimes, rather than spending momentum, can give you as a GM threat. You as a GM spend threat, to do the equivalent to the players to enhance rolls or make tests harder or easier, etc. So there you go. That, as I say, is a very quick look at Star Trek Adventures. Look for me to maybe come back to this once I've had more goes of it, and maybe a sort of how to play video. But at the moment, I'm still getting my head around it. It's the 2D20 system, which is also used, I believe, in the Mutant Chronicles RPG, the Conan RPG, which I've got a PDF of, and having been so impressed by Star Trek Adventures, I am tempted to go out and buy the actual rulebook in hardback. And really, really impressive game system. I believe it's been out a little bit of a while, and some people got to have a go at the beta test. So a lot of videos on YouTube for this system can be as much as 6 months old, but I'm not sure. I think the actual hardback's only recently come out, so maybe a month or so. Really, really impressed. There are some really nice figures to go with the game, and some nice placemats. I'm probably going to use Battle Stations, the board game, initially. I might look into buying the official tiles and miniatures at a later date. I would love to get an extra set of dice, but for the price I might limit myself to just one set. I was actually tempted at one stage to buy one of each colour, but You know, I think it cost me something like £60 or something stupid, and they're really expensive. They're £14 to £17 a box, which, you know, is just outrageous, really. So if they could sort out the price on the dice, I would say definitely buy them, but currently a provisional only if you don't want to look up on charts, and it's not that onerous, so there you go. Right, so just to wind up then, if you're a big fan of Star Trek, I think you're probably going to want this game. If you already own all, for example, the Farsa edition, it still might be worthwhile looking into, just so you've got a more up-to-date, more modern style game. And of course, it is very good for those of you interested in the next generation era of Star Trek. Are they going to do a Discovery supplement book? Who can tell? I know amongst Star Trek people, Discovery's a little bit Marmite. I think it's a good sci-fi show. Is it a good Star Trek show? That's a different story. Enterprise is sort of supported. Original series is sort of supported. Again, maybe some supplements might come out at a later date to, you know, make a better set of options for dealing with that. Now, having said that, as I say, I do know in here one of the adventures is set in the original series but can be used in any time frame. I haven't checked too many of the adventures in here yet to work out what's going on. And of course, you've also got that living campaign they're doing via their newsletter. So I think there's a good future for Star Trek Adventures. It seems to be a really slick game system, in, of course, a great setting, and it looks very thematic, and I can see it doing a really good job at making you feel like you're in Star Trek